Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jai Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Bhajajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Bhajajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Please, not on the floor. Not on the floor. Jaya Mishnapad Paramahansa Pradikacharya Ashtotar Tadashi Srimad Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Pradikacharya Ashtotar Tadashi Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavindra Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Dimitri, you're on. Oh. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay, can we close that door? I don't think we need both of them open. Okay. On the 6th day of October 2021 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. We are still in chapter 15, entitled The Yoga of the Supreme Person. And we're on text 17 on page 610. Now, Mark Prabhu, if a lady comes, I'm going to ask you to move over. Okay? I mean, they probably won't at this point, but that's I'm going to do. Okay. Uttama Purushastvanya Paramatmeti Udaritaha Yolokatrayam Avishya Vibharti Avyaya Ishvaraha Uttama Purushastvanya Padamatme Chudaritaha Yolokatrayam Avishya Vibhartyam Yaya Ishvaraha Uttamak Purushastvanya Padamatme Chudaritaha Yolokatrayam Avishya Vibhartyam Yaya Ishvaraha Uttamak Purushastvanya Paramatme Chudaritaha Yo Loka Trayamavishya Vibhartyam Hya Ishvaraha Uttamak Purushastvanya Paramatme Chudaritaha Yo Loka Trayamavishya Vibhartyam Hya Ishvaraha Uttamak Purushastvanya Paramatme Chudaritaha Yo Loka Trayamavishya Vibhartyam Hya Ishvaraha. You want to try it, Mark? Please. Uttamak Purushastvanya Paramatme Chudaritaha Yo Loka Trayamavishya Vibhartyam Hya Ishvaraha. No, not yet. You want to try it? Uttamak Purushastvanya Paramatme Chudaritaha Loko Yatrayam Avishya Vibhartyam Hya Ishvara. Little improvement. Getting there. Jessica, you in line? Hello?
Hare Krishna, I'm here, Prabhu.
Go ahead.
Uttamak Purushastvanyat
Uttamak Purushastvanya
Paramatme Chudaritaha
Paramatme Chudaritaha
Yo Lokatrayamavishya
Yo Lokatrayamavishya
Vibhartyam Yaya Ishvaraha.
Vibhartyam Hya Ishvaraha. Uttama, the best. Purushaha, personality. Two, but. Anyaha, another. Parama Atma, the supreme self. Iti, thus. Udaritaha is said. Yaha, who. Loka, of the universe. Trayam, the three divisions. Avisha, entering. Vibharti is maintaining. Abhyayaha, inexhaustible. Ishvaraha, the Lord. Besides these two, there is the greatest living personality, the Supreme Soul, the imperishable Lord Himself, who has entered the three worlds and is maintaining them. Purport. The idea of this verse is very nicely expressed in the Katha Upanishad 2.2.13 and the Shvetashvatara Upanishad 6.13. It is clearly stated there that above the innumerable living entities, some of whom are conditioned and some of whom are liberated, there is the Supreme Personality, who is Paramatma. The Upanishadic verse runs as follows: Nityo Nityanam Chaitanas Chaitananam. The purport is that amongst all the living entities, both conditioned and liberated, there is one Supreme Living Personality, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who maintains them and gives them all the facility of enjoyment according to different work. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is situated in everyone's heart as the Paramatma. A wise man who can understand him is eligible to attain perfect peace and not others. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Shri Parampara. So, it's interesting, Krishna has gone into the third person again. He doesn't say, I am that Paramatma who's maintaining everything. He says, there is a Supreme Atma. But in the next verse, he comes back to discussing himself as that Paramatma. So, previous verse, Yavima Purusha Loke, this Akshara and Chara, right? The two distinctions between different classes of living entities. Chara literally means they've been cut off, or they've been separated artificially, but still separated in their consciousness from our original home in the spiritual world. The Akshara are those who are staying in oneness. They haven't fallen. They're still serving Krishna. They're not bewildered. So there's unlimited living beings, and each one of them falls in living entities, individual souls, and they each fall into one of those two categories. And besides these two categories, there's the Uttama Purusha. In other words, Krishna's in a different category. He is infinite, we are infinitesimal. And here it comes back to the idea of the Paramatma, or the Supreme Soul, who we described in text 15, a few verses back, if you recall, Sarvasya Chaham Mridi Sannivishto. Now he says, I am. Now he's in the first person. Sarvasya Chaham Mridi Sannivishto. I am in everyone's heart. Sarvasya Mridi Sannivishto Matta Smritir Jnanam Apohanangsha. And for me come remembrance and knowledge and forgetfulness also. Smriti, Jnanam, and Apohanam, forgetfulness. So what determines whether we're getting remembrance or knowledge or forgetfulness? This is our own choice. If we want to artificially cut ourselves off from the Supreme Personality of Godhead and become artificial enjoyers and owners of this world, then we'll forget everything about the spiritual world. And we'll mainly forget who we really are. We'll identify with this gross and subtle body rather than our actual spiritual identity. And so in that illusion, we've been mucking around in this material world since time immemorial. Sometimes on a heavenly planet, sometimes on a hellish planet, sometimes in the body of a beast, an insect, a bird, a tree, like that. And it's going on and on and on. And it's all because of our, as described at the beginning of this chapter, how when we're human beings, we create a certain kind of mentality according to the modes of nature that we associate with. Remember that there's one verse in the 13th chapter that I point to as kind of the essence of everything. Purusha prakatisto hi bhunkte prakatijan gunan karanang godasangosya sadasadyoni janmasu. The Purusha, in this case, not the Supreme Purusha, the Uttama Purusha, but the artificial Purusha. We're actually Prakriti. We are energy by nature, but we're trying to be the masters and controllers and enjoyers. But in this verse, it's described, we're Purusha, because we're acting like that. And we're within Prakriti, this material energy. We learned that. It's a simple idea. This material body is made up of different elements, right? There's some liquids, there's solids, there's gases, there's some energy in the terms of digestive energy, fire, and mental energy. There's gross and there's subtle elements, and all together it produces a body. And each of us has a unique one, right? But the elements are the same. And each of us is occupying it and identifying with that particular body. But our real nature is different, purely spiritual. The body can be easily destroyed, burned up, cut apart. The soul can never be cut. It can never be burned. It can never be destroyed. The body is clearly mortal. The soul is immortal. So what determines, then the key element is, what determines which body we occupy? That's described in this verse. How we associate with the modes of nature in the human form. If we are attracted and we associate with those and in the modes of ignorance, and that means that, as described in the 17th chapter, we'll also be attracted to food in the mode of ignorance, music in the mode of ignorance, entertainment in the mode of ignorance. In other words, that's our basic mode of operation. But that's a very dangerous mode because it produces madness, it produces intoxication and suffering, and you generally lose the human form after that, if that's your main mode. In the mode of passion, we're a little more self-controlled, we're ambitious, we try to make our way in this world, accumulate wealth, enjoy, like that. It's a little different mode. But that's also, you're not going back to Godhead in that mode. And the problem is that it's often adulterated with the mode of ignorance. You can easily see someone's in the mode of passion, he's really get go, but, oh, that was exhausting, let me just take some intoxication and just, fall into sleep, a lot of sleep, extra sleep. I remember, when I was a kid, 18, 19, 20, the weekend, oh, thank God it's Friday, I can sleep in. You can sleep till 10, 11, 12. Did anyone ever do that? I mean, I used to do it all the time. Oh, this is great. I don't have to get up for work, I don't have to get up for school. Suddenly you're in the mode of ignorance, So as we associate, then you have a certain configuration of modes, and that will determine whether you get a good or bad birth. That's what this verse says. And the same thing is described at the beginning of this chapter. After the first part about the banyan tree, then Krishna says in text 7, every being in this world is my anksha, and they're eternally so. And they're struggling hard with the 6 senses, which include the mind. The living entity in material world carries different conceptions of life. This is the key. How do we get those conceptions? By what we do in this world. What we read, what we hear, who we hang out with. Right? We're forming conceptions, mentality. We carry that from one body to another as the air carries aromas. So we're compared to the air, the living entity, and the mentality is compared to the different aromas. And it's described in the purport. If the air is going off across a nice garden, it picks up a nice aroma, very nice. But it can easily go across a garbage heap and kind of stinky. So we're determining what kind of mentality we have, what kind of body we will have. So everything depends on consciousness. You can't get away from it. And then you can't. Those without the jnana chakshus, the eyes of knowledge, cannot understand how one leaves a certain body, gets into another. We've seen that. So this is the process of transmigration, and it helps to understand that we're not alone. In other words, we have God within us, and He's always trying to give us good instruction. There's this famous analogy from the Upanishads. Even before I learned about Krishna and was reading Prabhupada's books, I read in the Upanishads this analogy of 2 birds in the tree. The body's like a tree, and there's 2 birds. There's 2 souls there: the individual soul and the supersoul. And the individual soul is trying to enjoy the fruits of the tree, which are different varieties of sense gratification. The Paramatma bird, he's just observing. And he's giving us intelligence how we can do that according to our karma. But he's waiting for when that enjoying bird will turn to him and learn about how to attain his real welfare, which is to get out of the tree entirely. We don't want to be in the tree of a material body. So that Paramatma, as we heard, I think this morning or recently, we can't access right away. We're too covered over. We get some hints of that. The voice of conscience is the Paramatma. The voice of when we say, no, I want to do it, but I shouldn't do it. That should is the voice of the Paramatma. Should and should not. But people, if you really get in the modes of ignorance, you can shut that voice. You don't hear it anymore. You become like a sociopath. You ever hear that? Where you just you have no empathy. You take pleasure in others taking pain. It's horrible. There's like a lot of people like that. So we want to increase our access to the voice of the Paramatma, and the best and the most efficient way to do that is by hearing from Shastra, from realized souls who are completely have the access to the Paramatma. Krishna is speaking to us. The Paramatma is speaking to us through the Bhagavad Gita here, and through any transcendental sound that's genuine, because he's making himself accessible, and the instruction is consistent through the different Vedas and the different Shastras. Don't do this. Don't let the senses run riot. Practice in this way, and especially in this age, fix your mind on the Supreme through the holy name, Supreme Personality, through chanting the holy name, especially Hare Krishna mantra. And that then we get more and more knowledge from within. There's a beautiful verse in the second chapter, first canto, that is, we have this pamphlet. You've probably seen it, Reservoir of Pleasure. Have you seen that pamphlet? We still sometimes distribute that, right? Give it away. Anyway, Prabhupada, the main essay in there is actually a transcription of a lecture Prabhupada gave on this verse. So he says, Shinvatam Sukata Krishna Punya Shavana Kirtana Riddandaksto Yabadrani Vidunoti Suritsatam. Krishna is in the heart as Supersoul. When he understands, and he can understand everything, that you're actually hearing about him from the proper source and you're hearing in the right attitude, then he's very eager to cleanse away all of this dirt that is preventing us from seeing ourselves and from seeing God. Vidunoti suritsatam. This is called a badra, that which is inauspicious. And what does it consist of? Lust, anger, greed, illusion, madness, intoxication. These things are obstructions within the heart. But we can clean them away, or we can act in such a way that Krishna will clean from within. So he is suritsatam. So satam means those who are saintly or trying to be saintly, trying to follow the process. Then he is surit, the ever well-wisher. He's the ever wisher of everyone. But we really understand that and experience his activities of being ever well-wisher when we're following the process of hearing and chanting and doing other processes of bhakti. And we feel ourselves to be getting cleansed, getting purified, our consciousness. You can feel it. And the most obvious way to feel it is that, thank God, I'm not interested in that anymore. You know? Because if you're in the modes, deep in the modes, you have to, go in that way. What does Krishna say at the end of the 3rd chapter? Arjuna asks a question for us. What is it that impels us to do things that we even know in our part of our brain is bad for us? The classic case is the cigarettes. I was around. I was, aware when they started putting those messages on the cigarette package. Warning: cigarette smoking is hazardous to your health. The cigarette companies were fighting that tooth and nail, but finally it became obvious that it's bad for you, so they agreed to do it. Because you're selling something to someone you're supposed to be enjoying, and then right in the package it says it's bad for you, and yet cigarette sales are still going on because you can't follow it. You're addicted to nicotine, obviously, and therefore it overcomes your intelligence. That's exactly what Krishna says at the end of the 3rd chapter. Arjuna asks, what is it that impels you? And Krishna says, kama. Kama esha, krodha esha, rajogunu samudbhava. I mean, who hasn't been so angry that you do things or say things that you were then sorry for? And if you're really nuts, you can, kill someone or hurt someone, and then, how did I do that? What a mistake. Yeah, because this is the result of being estranged from Krishna and being under the control of those modes of nature. So this kama covers our knowledge. We always have to remember, whatever we do, it begins with intelligence. We're thinking of how to do it, and we want to do it, and we go this way. When the intelligence is covered, and we no longer have, merely human intelligence, because more and more animalistic, then you don't have the strength, you don't have the willpower to deny the demands of the senses. Especially when you've succeeded in making one or more of them addicted to something that's harmful. I mean, now, from this perspective, sitting here quietly, we can see that this is the truth. So, Krishna is so kind. He breaks that addiction. He gives us more and more intelligence, more and more knowledge, and he gives us the spiritual strength to say no to those demands. Till finally, they're not even demanding anymore. You just remember what it was like Yamunacharya. You know the story. Yamunacharya was a great devotee. Then he got a kingdom, and he kind of got into what the kingdom can give you, all kinds of sense gratification. Then he was saved from that, and then he became Yamunacharya, wrote wonderful books, and he wrote this verse that's quoted twice in the purports here. You know what it is? I'm sorry? Yeah, he got half the king. Yeah, later on, after he had spent some time enjoying. Yeah. And then he was saved by his friend. So Yadavadi Mama Chaita Krishna Pada Binde. One day in my life I'm going to hear you chant this verse correctly. This is what I'm praying. You can all encourage him. Yadavadi Mama Chaita Krishna Pada Binde Navanamana Sadhaman Yudyatam Rantam Asit Tadavadi Badanadi Sangame Smayamani Bhavati Mukhavikaru Sushtu Nishtivanangcha. Yadavadi means ever since. Ever since I have been enjoying at every moment the transcendental pleasure of serving Krishna's lotus feet in rasa. Ever since then, whenever I remember some of my experiences with the harem, let's just put it like that, it's, oh God, that is disgusted. His lips turn in distaste and he spits. You know? Whereas in the modes of passion and ignorance, he says, oh yeah, let's go to the movie, let's think about this, you know, let's do it, you know, just the opposite. But what's the more wholesome form of existence? Because the enjoyment of serving Krishna, which is far greater, it doesn't end. And it's not dependent on burning out your senses and ruining your brain. It's very wholesome. There's no bad side effect to chanting and dancing and serving Krishna. It's all completely wholesome for the body, mind, spirit, everything. Whereas sense gratification is degrading in this life. What to speak of next life? And the pleasure that by those who know, like Rupa Goswami writes in his Nectar of Devotion, or Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, there's these three classes of enjoyment, okay? There's gross and subtle sense gratification, which is the lowest. And then there's Brahmananda, merging into Brahman and being free from all of this attraction to the gross and subtle matter. So that's like an ocean compared to the drop of sense gratification, which is so temporary. That's the basic thing. But Brahmananda continues and continues, for some time anyway. But Brahmananda compared to Premananda is like a drop in the ocean of Premananda. You can try to imagine, you know. And wonderful thing about Lord Chaitanya's movement is that if you really are serious about it and you practice strictly, even after a few days, you can experience little indications of that bliss, that happiness, that you have never experienced before. And what to speak of really advancing nicely and going up to the highest level. So we have faith that that's there, and Krishna is describing in systematically here. This Prabhupada quotes in this purport this verse, and by the way, I really like to get a new set of Bhagavatams. These are now coming from 2011 or something. I think they're like 10 years old, and there've been some important revisions, if you want to call them that. 2014. This particular purport, I noticed that this latter part of the purport is simply a translation of the whole verse. The whole verse is actually translated here, and Prabhupada gives this one line here. But nityo nityanam chaitanas chaitananam eko bahunam yovadadati kaman. Then there's the second part of the verse, which I don't know the Sanskrit too. But what it says is, of all the eternal conscious beings, nitya is singular, nityanam is plural. Chaitana is singular, Chaitananam is plural, you see? So the eternal conscious beings, Eko, there's one. Eko means one. Like a Kadashi, Dashi means 10. 10 and 1 is 11, 11th day. See? Ekadashi. Eko Bahunam, one out of all those many is what? Yovidadhati Kaman, is giving the Kaman the necessities and the things they want for all the others, supplying. So that idea alone should wake us up. Oh, everything that I need, like air, water, fire, electricity, the sun, the moon, all of these things are being supplied ultimately by the Lord. And yet we're ignoring them. Prabhupada points out, if you don't pay your electric bill, eventually it's shut off. You don't get the light anymore. Similarly, the water, right? So you realize, okay, I have to have enough money in the bank to pay that every month. It's a sacrifice. Similarly, we're getting the sun, we're getting the air, we're getting the water from nature, but nature is controlled by God. So therefore, we're debtors. We're debtors to the gods, the representatives of Krishna. Indra, that was the whole idea in the Indra Jagya in Vrindavan, the Govardhana. Nanda Maharaj was dutifully following the process of worshipping the demigod who provides the rain, because the rain is essential for agriculture. Right? But ultimately, he gave up that, and he was serving Krishna, even though he didn't know that his son was God. But the point is that Krishna is teaching you don't have to worship anyone else. If you duly worship for Krishna and sacrifice your life for him, all the debts are forgotten. You don't owe anything to the sun god or the moon god or the Indra or the Vayu, Varuna, You know, all of these gods and goddesses who provide us. Where do you think we get the intelligence? Saraswati, you know. One second. So we're focusing now on the Paramatma, Uttama Purusha. This I know. This chapter is called the Yoga of the Supreme Person, Purushottama Yoga, Purusha Uttama Yoga. So he's coming to that point now. He's winding up the chapter, and now there's Uttama Purusha. Besides all of these individual living entities, there's one Supreme, who's known as Paramatma, but actually Krishna is the source of the Paramatma, so we'll come to him. And he's maintaining all the others. So Prabhupada points out, well, that's just the same thing as this verse. That the Upanishads are confirmed here in the Bhagavad Gita. You had a question there, Mark? Please, we need to use the mic because there are people listening.
Well, maybe I have questions more vital for myself, but I just was curious. It's more than a question. It's just I just was curious.
It would be help if you pull the mask down. I can hear you better. Don't worry about it. You won't get sick.
Okay.
Not up, but down.
Oh, down. Okay. That you no, I'm okay. It's more about curious, not a real question. Why you have been using demigods and some of the times gods? Are you aware of it?
Why do we have?
Why have you been using gods and goddesses and some of the times demigods, which we know
Yes,
very close?
I do different terms for the same thing. Gods is referring to demigods. God is Krishna,
I know.
the source of all the demigods. And there's also goddesses, like Durga is a goddess. She has power too. Right?
Just want to share. I'm aware about the privilege for the female nature that they can all the manifestation of the Parashakti can be called goddesses because that's kind of privilege for them. But for the male nature is God and the demigods. Is that correct?
I'm not sure I'm understanding. You're saying the demigoddesses are expansions of, right, Radharani and the other. Is that what you're saying? And
well, maybe it's not the time for this. I open a door. The point is that the manifestations of Shakti, they refer of themselves as plainly goddess. Each one, they have that kind of privilege, but we know that there's just only God and the demigods. Well, God and the goddess, and the Shakti, Parashakti, or Radharani. And all the rest of manifestations, even Lakshmi and Parvati, for what I feel, is very delicate because it's kind of mystical understanding or esoterical even, that they themselves, the female manifestations, they call themselves goddess.
yeah.
But we know that, you know what I'm saying, Prabhu?
Not really. I'm
okay,
sorry.
it's just...
There's
okay.
a language barrier. Better
Okay.
to write me. Yeah.
Okay.
All right, let's go on. Unless there's other
Can I
questions.
ask
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. So this question is from the 1515, the Sarvasya Chaham Radhisya Nimisto. So it says that the living entity forgets everything of his past life, but he has to act according to the direction of the Supreme Lord, and therefore he begins his work according to his past deeds and acts like that. So my question is, if we are acting from past deed and whatever karma and what we did before, so sometimes we don't act good and all, so it's still, I mean, we are acting like because we did from past karma, we are here to finish because we acted bad or whatever, so we cannot, suppose we didn't act right. So it's from our past deeds. So then sometimes I'm trying to make sure I'm understanding right. So sometimes we shouldn't think that, oh, this person, no matter how we tell them not to do or should not do this or whatever, because of the past deed, they are acting like that. So sometimes we cannot help it. Is that the right understanding?
Well, the idea is that as human beings, we have a special facility. That is the higher intelligence, by which we can not simply to surrender to the lower self, the impulses of the mind and senses. When you go down the scale into animal life, or into many human beings, they have the intelligence, but the intelligence is completely controlled by the lower urges. You know what I'm saying? And so they're kind of stuck in a cycle of okay, they've come to the human form of life, but because they haven't got good association, they're simply in the culture of some variety of sense gratification, and they're acting in such a way that they'll probably, they oftentimes lose that human form of life because they're violating so many rules and regulations that they don't even know about. We'll read in the 5th canto. In the morning, we're going to be reading about those who perform activities that result in hellish punishment. So so that goes for ordinary life without any tinge of transcendental knowledge or instruction from the Vedas or whatever. But once there's an intervention, and once you are, by good fortune or the mercy of a devotee, or some activity in your previous life, even agyata sukriti, you didn't even know it, but you did some service. So therefore you have a chance to come into contact with this knowledge, by which you can change the whole character of your activities. That is at least part of it, your day is spent not working in the modes, not developing new attachments, not new conditioning, but you're actually going against the grain conditioning. Now it's a struggle. This word yatata comes up again and again, which means to strive. Why do we have to strive? Because we have so many bad habits. We need to strive to be able to give up the things we know we should give up, and to be able to take on and do those things that we know that will help us. In any discipline, if you want to go from point A to point B and C and D, then you have to make the effort. What keeps you going on? The result, the thing at the end. Even in our ordinary life, some kids growing up, parents are saying, oh, you should study in school, you'll get good marks, then you'll get into a good college, you'll have a good life, So you say, yes, I want that. I don't want to be like these guys on the street, so I'm going to study, I'm going to do my homework. So I have to not do this, not do this, not do that, and do my homework. I mean, that's a simple example, but it's like that in anything. Or I always give the example of learning an instrument. I learned several instruments, musical instruments. So there's a period, when you're starting out and it doesn't sound like music at all, you start learning how to make a sound on the thing, But you heard a record, or you heard someone playing the violin or the flute or whatever it may be, piano. Say, boy, that's great, I'd love to do that. And if you have the karma to be a musician, then you'll be attracted to go through that period when it's so difficult. Then you get skills after a while, before you know it, you're making some music. So it's true of anything material or spiritual. If you want to go from point A to point D, you have to go from B and C, and that means you have to accept things that may be difficult, discipline, and you have to give up things that you would otherwise do during that time. So it's certainly true in spiritual life. And what is that you referred to in the purport? I remember reading it. The living entity forgets everything of his past life, but he has to act according to the direction of the Supreme Lord, who's witness to all his work and is giving him the remembrance. Remembrance, knowledge, forgetfulness. That's part of what the Supersoul gives. So we may forget, but we're still carrying that within us. There's a whole way in which the karma develops. It kind of unspools from subtle or dormant to starts to manifest, and then it becomes actually fully manifest, and we act, we do something, or we suffer something that's due to our karma. But the wonderful thing about Krishna consciousness is that it completely changes your karma. Only in Krishna consciousness, because Krishna, the beautiful verse in the Brahma Samhita, where there's a nice metaphor for this. He says, Yat Tvinda Gopa Matavendra Mahosva Karma Bandhana Rupa Palabhajana Matanoti. From Indra Gopa, Indra, the god of heaven, down to the Indragopa germ, everyone is bound up by his karma. But karmani nirdahati kintuja bhakti bhajan, for those who are worshipping Govinda, the primeval Lord, heart and soul, he burns up all the karma. Nirdahati, totally burned up. So what's left? Why are you doing anything? What's the impetus for action? It's coming from Krishna. Why are we coming to Mangalarti? Because Krishna said we should, through the medium of the spiritual master. Okay, we're doing it.
Thank you so much.
Like that, and so that's it's a whole different dynamic when as soon as we enter the house of bhakti, it's going on like that. All right.
Hare Krishna.
Vijay Krishna, you're there. Go ahead.
Yes, Dravida Prabhu, thank you very much. The quote from the translation, if I may, is, quote, "Besides these two, there is the greatest living personality," end quote. So my question is, if I decide to go for becoming the greatest living personality, is it that it is enough to enter the three worlds and maintaining them? Or is it that I need to do more and better?
Is this a joke?
No, this is a very serious question.
No, besides these two what? There's not just two. There's two categories of beings who are the Kshara and the Akshara, living entities, jivas. In other words, there's trillions and trillions upon billions and quadrillions of living entities, most of whom are in the spiritual world, and they're Akshara. And then we who are in the material world, Akshara. Means we're fallible. We fell down. Probably he would even pronounce it fallible. Fallible. So we've fallen. Besides these two categories, infinite examples of them, there's one, right? There's another, Anya, who is the Uttama Purusha. That's the whole point of the chapter. That's the Purushottama Yoga. Who is, let's see, what does it say? He's has entered the three worlds as the Purusha avatars, you know, Mahavishnu, Garbhodaksha Vishnu, and Kshirodaksha Vishnu, Supersoul, who expands the Supersoul. He's entered every atom, every heart. He's supporting everything. Vishnu. He's supporting the whole creation. And Vibharti of the Ishvara, this is the source of Prabhupada's purport here, he's maintaining. Because it's from Krishna, via the Supersoul and all of his expansions, that are supplying the air and the water and the food and everything else that we live on. So that's we can't become the Uttama Purusha. You know that. There's the greatest living personality. One. The spot is taken already. We can't do that. The imperishable Lord himself, who has entered the three worlds and is maintaining them. So our ambition is not to become the Uttama Purusha. That's what got us into this mess in the beginning. But to be reinstated again as humble servants of the lotus feet of the Uttama Purusha for eternity. That's our perfection. Can I do one?
Yes, Dravida Prabhu, thank you very much. Again, a spectacular answer to my question.
I've graduated from wonderful to spectacular. Thank you. Okay, thank you, Vijay. All right, we are moving along to text 18. Yasmat charamatitoham aksharad vichotamaha atosmi loke verecha patita purushottamaha. Now again, Krishna comes back to himself. He's going to end this whole chapter. Not some third person, but me. Because I am transcendental beyond both the fallible and the infallible, and because I am the greatest, I am celebrated both in this world, in the world, and in the Vedas as that supreme person. Purport: no one can surpass the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, neither the conditioned soul nor the liberated soul. He is therefore the greatest of personalities. Now it is clear here that the living entities and the Supreme Personality of Godhead are individuals. The difference is that the living entity, either in the conditioned state or in the liberated state, cannot surpass in quantity the inconceivable potencies of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is incorrect to think of the Supreme Lord and the living entities as being on the same level or equal in all respects. There is always the question of superiority and inferiority between their personalities. The word Uttama is very significant. No one can surpass the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The word Loke signifies, quote, in the Paurusha Agama, the Smriti scriptures. Okay. As confirmed in the Nirukti dictionary, Lokyate Vedarto Nena. The purpose of the Vedas is explained by the Smriti scriptures. The Supreme Lord, in his localized aspect of Paramatma, is also described in the Vedas themselves. The following verse appears in the Vedas, Chandogya Upanishad 8.12.3. Tavadesa samprasado smat charirat samutaya parang jyoti rupam sampadya svena rupena binispadyate sa uttama purusha. Uttama purusha. There you go. The Supersoul coming out of the body enters the impersonal Brahma Jyoti. Then in his form he remains in his spiritual identity. The Supreme is called the Supreme Personality. This means that the Supreme Personality is exhibiting the diffusing his spiritual effulgence, which is the ultimate illumination. The Supreme Personality also has a localized aspect as the Paramatma. By incarnating himself as the son of Satyavati and Parashara, he explains the Vedic knowledge as Vyasadeva. So it's important to remember that there's no Supersoul in the spiritual world. The Supersoul is only here in the material world, because there's no difference between the body and the soul, either for Krishna or for ourselves when we get to the spiritual world. The spiritual bodies means that's why there's no decay, there's no death, there's no disease. There's no disease in the spiritual body, only this very inferior material body. So the Supersoul is here, and he has these important functions, sustaining the universe and providing all of the intelligence by which we act and remembrance, all of these things. So that's, but again, that Supersoul is Krishna, and he's very eager and willing to enlighten us with transcendental knowledge, directly and especially indirectly through the Shastra and through the realized souls. So we have all facility, and Krishna is eager to get us back. Why does he come? Remember, he comes. Yadaya dahi dharmasya glana bhavati bharata. Whenever there is a discrepancy in religion, then I appear, in order to protect the devotees, reestablish religion, and annihilate the miscreants. So why does he bother, Lord? So he tries to bring us back. He's with us all the time, trying to give us good instruction, but we're so stubborn that we don't listen to it. So therefore, he comes himself, or he sends his representatives to try to penetrate the darkness. That's why we say, Om Jnana Timirandasya. I was born in the greatest of darkness, ignorance, but my spiritual master opened my eyes with the actually what it says is Shalakya, with an instrument, and provided knowledge so I could finally see what's going on. That's the image. Shalakya is a medical instrument. I'm sorry? Yeah. Okay, we have time for one more, and then we'll finish up this chapter next week. Okay, this is like a summary verse here. 19. Yomam evam asamudho. Okay, let me say. Yomam evam asamudho. Janati purushottamam. Sasarvavid bhajati mam. Sarva bhavena bharata. Whoever knows me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead without doubting is the knower of everything. He therefore engages himself in full devotional service to me, O son of Bharat. Well, you can see how important that verse is. Purport: there are many philosophical speculations about the constitutional position of the living entities and the Supreme Absolute Truth. Now, in this verse, the Supreme Personality of Godhead clearly explains that anyone who knows Lord Krishna to be the Supreme Person is actually the knower of everything. The imperfect knower goes on simply speculating about the absolute truth, but the perfect knower, without wasting his valuable time, engages directly in Krishna consciousness, the devotional service of the Supreme Lord. Throughout the whole of the Bhagavad Gita, this fact is being stressed at every step, and still, there are so many stubborn commentators on the Bhagavad Gita who consider the Supreme Absolute Truth and the living entities to be one and the same. Vedic knowledge is called Shruti, learning by oral reception. That's through the ear. one should actually receive the Vedic message from authorities like Krishna and his representatives. Here, Krishna distinguishes everything very nicely, and one should hear from this source. Simply to hear like the hogs is not sufficient. One must be able to understand from the authorities. It is not that one should simply speculate academically. One should submissively hear from the Bhagavad Gita that these living entities are always subordinate to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Anyone who is able to understand this, according to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, knows the purpose of the Vedas. No one else knows the purpose of the Vedas. The word bhajati is very significant. In many places, the word bhajati is expressed in relationship with the service of the Supreme Lord. If a person is engaged in full Krishna consciousness in the devotional service of the Lord, it is to be understood that he has understood all the Vedic knowledge. In the Vaishnava Parampara, it is said that if one is engaged in the devotional service of Krishna, then there is no need for any other spiritual process for understanding the supreme absolute truth. He has already come to the point because he's engaged in the devotional service of the Lord. He has ended all preliminary processes of understanding. But if anyone, after speculating for hundreds of thousands of lives, does not come to the point that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead and that one has to surrender there, all the speculation for so many years and lives is a useless waste of time. So that brings us almost to the point of the Yarti. But one verse that came to mind here is from the 7th chapter. Bahunam janmanamante jnanavan mam prapadyate vasudeva sarvamiti samahatma sudurlabha. After many, many lives, bahunam janmanam, many, many births, one who is truly full of knowledge surrenders unto me, understanding that Vasudeva is everything. So that's exactly what Krishna is saying here and what Prabhupada is stressing in the purport. Now, what does it mean to be the knower of everything? Obviously, we're not going to become omniscient and know everything that everyone is thinking and everything. No, we're going to know everything that we need to know to return back to Godhead and to engage in our devotional service to Krishna. This is what the everything means. It doesn't mean that we become omniscient like Krishna. But all the knowledge of the Bhagavad Gita, how this world came to be, what our place in it is, what the process of devotional service is, and especially our individual service to Krishna, that all becomes revealed to us. So this is a very wonderful fruit that we can look forward to. As Krishna says, it's very confidential in the next verse, which we won't read tonight. Guyatamam Shastra. Guyatamam means the most confidential part of the Vedic scriptures. Now, one note just before we quit, and that is this word purpose. Anyone who is able to understand this according to the Supreme Personality of Godhead knows the purpose of the Vedas. No one else knows the purpose of the Vedas. Now, that makes sense. What's the purpose of the Vedas? To give us knowledge so we can get liberated. But it may also mean purport. Probably, if you look up in the Oxford English Dictionary, this word purpose can mean meaning or purport. So that may be what also is to know the actual meaning of the Vedas, what's being said there. Otherwise, it remains a great mystery. So just watch out for that word, and we'll see it. Okay, thank you for your attention, both local and remote. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hari Hari Bol. We'll finish the
Thank
chapter.
you very much, Dravida Prabhu. Wonderful class.
Hare Krishna, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. We'll finish the chapter next
Srila
week on Monday.
Prabhupada ki jai.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
What was that last thing he said? What did he say? Oh.